So I will end the show, but let me see your face.
Stronger,
Imagine a world without choices.
stronger,
Imagine you can't make your own decision. That wouldn't be a world for me. That wouldn't be a world for you. You, I see.
Tell them we're gonna be stronger. Together, together we can make it right. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. Gonna be stronger together. Time we all just unify. Our purpose is a better Jamaica for you and I. It isn't that alright?
All right, welcome to another edition of UIC Liberty TV. Thank you guys for coming on. Apologize for the late start. We're having some technical difficulties. Chase, who is supposed to be presenting tonight, is having, his camera isn't working. The camera on his laptop isn't working. So we're trying to get that sorted out. Unfortunately, it still hasn't been sorted out. So Chase will continue the live, but you won't be able to see him, unfortunately. Good night, VZI Truth. Norman Smith, good night. Lionel the Jungle, good night. Joseph Hunt, big up yourself. Where's JMH? How come he's not in class yet? Lady Williams, class is in session, of course. Big up yourself. Alan Scott, good to see you on. All right, guys, so Chase is still having camera issues. I'm gonna see if, hi Chase, can you hear me?
Yes, hearing you loud and clear. I hope everyone can hear me.
So let us know in the chat if you can hear, if you heard Chase a while ago. So we can know if his audio is clear. Let's put loud and clear if you can hear Chase.
All right, good night, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is, where you are in the world. All right, I apologize that you're not able to see me, but you all see Douglas's bright face to substitute. All right, so our topic tonight is peg salaries and pensions to inflation now, real security for Jamaicans. Now, before we get right into it, remember to like, comment, and share the live. If you have not subscribed yet, um, subscribe so that we can influence the YouTube algorithm to spread this message all around the world. Now, big up to all those who have tuned in. Let us get right into it. Now, everybody everywhere is feeling the pinch of the rising cost of living. Food, rent, mortgage, fuel, the cost of everything is rising above what we can afford. And on top of the cost of living getting out of control, our government, in addition to this, is robbing our people of a place in which to live. Now, what are our people to do? The government of Jamaica has left our people helpless. We have no financial security, no purchasing power with the dollar sliding away as it is. And for those of us who are less fortunate and have no chance whatsoever under this government system to own a home, what is it that Jamaicans must do? How then is a family supposed to be secure? Now, we have looked at these issues, the issues of land ownership, property ownership, how important it is to personal sovereignty. We have looked at financial security and the issue of pegging wages to salary in our first issue of the United newspaper. I hope you have seen it, but I'm going to ask Douglas now to share the screen since you're seeing him. If I share, you may not be able to see it. We are going to go through the first couple articles in the United newspaper which talk about this topic that we are investigating tonight. Or so, the, yes, great. So we're going through this article to inflation now. So you will follow along as I go through the article. Now, President of the United Independence Congress (UIC) Joseph L. Patterson demands that the government of Jamaica peg wages, salaries, and pensions to inflation to alleviate the economic strain faced by Jamaican people as the cost of living rises. Mr. Patterson made his demand during a rally at Nelson Mandela Park in Halfway Tree on the culmination of UIC's Walk for Good Governance Now, held on Thursday, September 22. Mr. Patterson had this to say to the government: if you want to help the Jamaican people right now, if you want to stop the bleeding right now, if you want to stop people from feeling like they are out of control right now, there's one thing the government can do right now. There's one thing they can do right now to help all Jamaicans. Peg the people's salary to inflation right now. If inflation goes up, the salary goes up. His recommendations follow a September 9, 2022 Gleaner headline, and this headline was titled Cost of Living in Jamaica Among the Highest in Latin America Region. And the statement also follow a March 16, 2022 Jamaica Observer article, Inflation at 11-year high. Jamaica's untenable living conditions and the high cost of living have recently forced over 400 teachers to have migrated overseas in search of better wages and better standards of living. The UIC solution of pegging wages, salaries, and pensions to inflation is revolutionary and will prove to increase the economic stability of all Jamaican workers. The public may listen to President Patterson's full address on the UIC's YouTube channel UIC Liberty TV at the 4-minute 42-second mark at this video UIC Jamaica Walk for Good Governance. Please see also the call to arms for the Good Governance Now walk at the video on UIC Liberty TV, Enough is Enough, Good Governance Now. The UIC notes that many interested persons feel timid because of the arrest of President Joseph Patterson and 3 others last year on September 22, 2021. However, we encourage all Jamaicans to stand with the UIC for all of us. United, we are strong. Stronger together. Now, this was an article in the first ever issue of the Uniter, published on October 11. So we see here the call to peg wages, to peg salaries, to peg pensions in light of the rising cost of living. And we are going to be exploring that more during our show tonight. But I want to also point out the fact that not only is the government forcing inflation, and we're going to be looking at how the government is doing that. The government is making it harder and harder for us to live. But on top of that, the government is running people out of their home and a chance to have a place of their own. And just going to look at that in the second article in that Uniter, and then we move forward with the rest of the show. Prime Minister bulldoze the people. The government of Jamaica, led by Prime Minister Andrew Holness, demolished at least 10 homes of Jamaican citizens in Bernard Lodge, near Clifton, St. Catherine. The residents have protested and are bemoaning the fact that they purchased their lots and have their receipts to prove it. Prime Minister Holness, however, made it clear that the lands were purchased from criminals who tricked the people by capturing the lands and selling them fraudulently. To date, there is no concrete evidence so far to indicate that the residents were contacted and advised that their purchase was illegal, nor is there any evidence that residents were warned that their homes would have been demolished. The UIC is concerned about the state of events and the welfare of these Jamaicans now that their lives have been severely disrupted by the loss of their homes. We are committed to make every Jamaican a property owner and to provide each with a decent home that they can afford and pass down from generation to generation. And we see here one of our the fourth point in our 10-point plan, to divest all crown lands and make Jamaicans a property owner, erasing garrisons, ghettos, and squatter communities. All right, thank you for that share, Douglas. Now, we must ask ourselves, is it not the role of the government to ensure a safe, orderly, and secure society for all? In our live broadcast aired some time ago, titled Government Overstepping Its Bounds, we looked at the actual role and purpose of government. It is quite apparent that our government is failing our people. In order to free us up from the economic victimization that the government has placed us under through this runaway inflation and robbing people of a place to live, the government must fix it and now must peg wages to inflation now. Now we're going to be listening to a clip from Mr. Patterson, Mr. Joseph L. Patterson, as he makes the charge to the government to peg wages, to peg salaries and pensions to inflation right now. All right, Douglas, can I bring the... Oh, great.
So clearly, we can't trust them, and we know that for 17 years. But I want to make them one final offer. One final offer. Here's the offer. Very simple. If you want to help the Jamaican people right now, if you want to stop the bleeding right now, if you want to stop people from feeling like they're under control right now, there's one thing the government can do right now to fix the Jamaican people problem. You want to hear it? Yes, sir. There's one thing they can do right now that will help all Jamaicans. Police, teachers, nurses, doctors, lawyers, contractmen, everybody. This one thing can help us all right now if they want to help. Yeah. But that's true too, though. They can just leave right now, but they don't have to talk about it. Right now, there's one thing they can do that will help us right now. If they believe that they want to help Jamaicans, peg the people's salary to inflation right now.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Peg the people's salary to inflation right now.
Yeah, right. That's so.
Peg the people's salary to the dollar right now.
Yeah.
So if inflation go up, your salary go up. If the dollar go down, your salary go up. Peg it, Mr. Prime Minister. Peg it right now. Peg it, Mr. Prime Minister. What do I say now do it? Because him now go do what will really help you. His job is to tell you that he wants to help you, but inflation is an international problem. But he loves the poor. He loves the poor. But I'll say it again. I challenge Mark Gordon. I challenge Andrew Holness. I challenge the PNP. I challenge the GLP. I challenge all of you in the Senate right now to agree the Jamaicans people salary and wages to inflation right now.
No more inflation. Right now.
Take it right now. And you solve all of the problem. Because when the bread go up, the salary going to go up automatically. When the gas go up, the salary go up automatically. When the rent go up, the salary go up automatically. So peg with wages and salaries right now to inflation, Mr. If you love the poor, Mr. Prime Minister. If you love the poor, Mr. Golding, peg it right now. Go to Parliament right now and tell them, peg it.
All right. So Mr. Patterson just presented a challenge to the government to peg inflation right now. Now, he made a very important point. Often we hear politicians and economists who may have a partisan side or not stating that inflation is an international problem and we can't do anything about it. So that point was made there. However, while there is some truth to inflation being affected by international events, such as the Russia Ukraine war, for example, much inflation is caused by local political and economic action. I want to also state that sometimes inflation is caused by natural disasters. So we can control natural disasters. And we in Jamaica can tell Russia to stop war Ukraine. So at that level, we can't do anything about inflation on the global scale. But did you know that the government initiates false inflation by printing so much money that there is an overabundance of money in the economy? When there is too much money in the market without a corresponding rise in production, the value of the dollar decreases and the price of the Jamaican dollar to other currencies such as the US dollar, the Cayman dollar, the British pound, and all other currencies goes up. So the government causes a glut in the market, too much of it, while there is not a rise in manufacturing and other means of production. In other words, when the government gives out free money as handouts or wastefully prints money so that there is now more money in the country, yet no new factories or businesses were created that had caused this influx of money, then this overflow of cash, which rarely ends up in the poor man's hand anyways, results in inflation. And when the value of the dollar goes down, when it costs more in Jamaican dollars to buy a US dollar or any other currency, then the cost of living goes up. Now, what do we mean? All right, for example, if JPS imports barrels of oil in US dollars, which it does, when inflation happens and we have to pay more Jamaican dollars for a US dollar, then JPS ends up paying more Jamaican dollars per US dollar for each barrel of oil that we need to burn for electricity. Now, when they have to pay more money out of their pocket, they have to still make their profit. And in order to make a profit, JPS will now charge this extra cost to we the customers on top of their service charge for electricity used. Mr. Patterson is making a point in the chat. We also import inflation by borrowing to pay for government waste and political corruption. Thanks for making that point, Mr. Patterson. We'll see it coming up later in the live. I see Jasmine Powell. The government can manage the task they have. They have to step aside and show Joseph L. Patterson to show them how. Great point, Jasmine. Yes, Wade, we have to educate, and still educate the people. All right. Another example of how inflation drives up the cost of living is when we import food items. We pay for many of these imports in US dollars, sometimes in euros and other currencies. Now, when the Jamaican dollar loses value, the importing companies have to pay more to source the food to stock the supermarkets and the shop shelves and the wholesalers and so forth. Now, the companies, the supermarkets, and the wholesales must recover that extra cost. And how do they do that? By increasing the price of the food items. Then we, the customers, now have to absorb the cost by paying that extra price that goes on the food item. And what caused this? The handouts and the government wasting our money and have to borrow back, which causes a glut of money in the system that don't even end up in our hands anyway, but still it drives down the value of the dollar. Now, what does this tell us? Obviously, the lack of manufacturing and production and the handout culture that our politicians have encouraged over the decades is contributing greatly to inflation, and it is killing us. It a kill it. That is why we have so many teachers, 400 teachers were lost from our classroom because life hard over here. So, and government feed directly into it. Mr. Patterson is saying now another source of inflation is an oversized government causing inflation by absorbing too much of our producing value in overtaxation without producing commensurate value to boost our productivity. Yes, that's another thing too. We have a big government. We have more ministers than we need, and now, on top of that, there is this overtaxation and no productivity. And we will get into that too. But I want our viewers to understand that the policies that the government initiates contribute to the lack of productivity too, because many times our factories and so forth need raw materials to make other things, and the duty that they have to pay on it would not make sense for them to produce, so they don't bother. It's cheaper to import. And so we don't have much manufacturing going on here because of the culture, the economic culture that the government creates. And the UIC will fix this when we are elected with your help by ensuring that the government take them clause, that we, the government, will not limit the economy, but will allow a free market economy. But moving on. Now, since the government is directly involved in causing inflation, the people should not have to suffer for it. The right thing to do is to peg salaries, wages, and pensions to inflation so that our people can make a decent living and really prosper and have good quality of life. Now, we should note, though, that what I have presented was a simple explanation of inflation. Now, we are going to be looking at a better explanation, because I'm a layman here, of how the government collude with the banks, working together to rob our people. All right, so Douglas, bring up that thing, inflation, the biggest scam in history.
You are about to learn one of the biggest secrets in the history of the world. It's a secret that has huge effects for everyone who lives on this planet. Most people can feel deep down that something isn't quite right with the world economy, but few know what it is. Gone are the days where a family can survive on just one paycheck. Every day it seems things are more and more out of control, yet only 1 in a million understand why. You are about to discover the system that is ultimately responsible for most of the inequality in our world today. The powers that be do not want you to know about this, as this system is what has kept them at the top of the financial food chain for the last 100 years. Learning this will change your life because it'll change the choices that you make. If enough people learn it, it'll change the world because it'll change the system. For this is the biggest hidden secret of money. Never in human history have so many been plundered by so few, and it's all accomplished through this, the biggest scam in the history of mankind. They say that money doesn't grow on trees, but the truth is that the modern banking system creates currency far faster than trees can grow. Most people don't have a clue how currency is created. Economists and bankers make it sound so complex that people think they can't understand it. But I'm going to strip our monetary system down to its essence so that you can see the scam behind the curtain and just how it affects you. Every modern society creates currency in pretty much the same way. But since the US dollar is the majority of the world's currency, I'm going to use the United States as our example. It all starts when some politician says, "Vote for me and I'll make sure the government provides you more free stuff than my opponent will." But there's no such thing as a free lunch. So to provide that supposedly free stuff, the politicians vote for the country to spend more than its income. This is called deficit spending. To pay for that deficit spending, Treasury borrows currency by issuing a bond. So what's a bond? If you think about it, a bond is really nothing but a glorified IOU. It's a pretty piece of with numbers printed on it that says, "Loan me $1 trillion today, and I promise over a 10-year period I'm going to pay you back that $1 trillion plus interest." But what you need to understand is that Treasury bonds are our national debt. These glorified IOUs are to be paid back by you and I and our descendants through future taxation. Therefore, when the government issues a bond, it steals prosperity out of the future so that it can spend it today. The Treasury then holds a bond auction, and the world's largest banks show up and compete to buy part of our national debt and make a profit on it by earning interest. You'll notice that as we move through this process, the big banks are there, taking a cut every step of the way. This isn't by chance, as you'll see shortly. Then, through a shell game called open market operations, the banks get to sell some of those bonds to the Federal Reserve at a profit. To pay for the bonds, the Federal Reserve opens up its big old checkbook and writes bad, bogus, counterfeit checks that should bounce because they're drawn on an account that always has a zero balance. There isn't one penny in there. To quote from the Boston Federal Reserve, "When you or I write a check, there must be sufficient funds in our account to cover that check. But when the Federal Reserve writes a check, there is no bank deposit on which that check is drawn. When the Federal Reserve writes a check, it is creating money." The Fed then hands those checks to the banks, and at this point, currency springs into existence. The banks then take that currency and buy more bonds at the next Treasury auction. But what is a check? A check is also an IOU. When you write a check, you're making a note that says, "Here's my IOU for cash. All you have to do is go to the bank and pick it up." Now, it's very, very important that you understand this process because we're going to come back later and show you the devastating effect this has on you. The Treasury issues IOUs, bonds. The banks then buy those IOUs with currency. The Federal Reserve then writes IOUs, checks, and hands them to the banks in exchange for the Treasury's IOUs, the bonds. And currency is created. So what's really happening is the Federal Reserve and the Treasury are just swapping IOUs, using the banks as middlemen, and abracadabra, presto, currency magically springs into existence. This process repeats and repeats over and over again, enriching the banks and indebting the public by raising the national debt. The end result is that there's a buildup of bonds at the Federal Reserve and currency at the Treasury. This process is also where all paper currency comes from. The Federal Reserve and the government mistakenly call it base money because they didn't watch episode 1 of this series and they don't know the difference between money and currency. But I will correctly refer to it as base currency because it is not money. It is currency, and as we've learned, there is a big difference. Money has to be a store of value and maintain its purchasing power over long periods of time. We learned in episode 1 that earlier in our history, our paper currency was just a claim check. It was a representation for real money of intrinsic value, the gold and silver that was held on deposit at the Treasury. You could walk into any bank and slap your currency, like say a $20 bill, on the counter and redeem it for real money, a $20 gold piece. But now, this base currency that's piling up back here is really nothing but a receipt or a claim check on an IOU, that bond. So it's really nothing but a supply of numbers. The Treasury then deposits the newly created currency into the various branches of the government, and the politicians say, "Hey, thanks for that." And the government does some deficit spending on public works, social programs, and war. The government employees, contractors, and soldiers then deposit their pay in the banks. Now, this may come as a shock to you, but when you deposit your currency with the bank, you're not actually depositing it into an account to be safely held in trust for you. Instead, you're actually loaning the bank your currency, and within certain legal limits, they can do with it pretty much anything they please. This includes gambling in the stock market and loaning it out, at a profit, of course. Now this is where the machine of currency creation really gets cranking, because this is where something called fractional reserve lending comes into play. Fractional reserve lending is exactly what it says. The banks are allowed to reserve only a fraction of your deposit and loan the rest out. Although reserve ratios may vary, I'm going to use a 10% reserve ratio as our example. If you deposit $100 in your account, the bank can legally take $90 of it and loan it out without telling you. The bank must hold $10 of your deposit in reserve just in case you want some of it. These reserves are called vault cash. But why does your bank account still say you have $100 if the bank has stolen $90 of it? Because the bank left IOUs it created, called bank credit, in its place. Now I know this sounds crazy, but here it is in black and white from the Fed. Commercial banks create checkbook money when they grant a loan simply by adding new deposit dollars in accounts on their books in exchange for a borrower's IOU. These are nothing but numbers that the banks type into their computers. And even though these bank credit IOU numbers are very different from base currency numbers, because they only exist in computers, they are still currency. So now there is $190 in existence. Now the reason people take out loans from the banks is to buy something. They're going to buy a house or a car or something like that. So the borrower takes the $90 the bank loaned to him from your account, and he pays the seller of the item. But then the seller deposits that currency into his account, and his bank loans out 90% of that and leaves bank credit numbers in its place. So now there's $271 in existence. This process repeats and repeats until under a 10% reserve ratio, an initial deposit of just $100 can create up to $1,000 of bank credit, all backed by $100 of vault cash, just 10%. But as I said, reserve ratios vary wildly. On some deposits, it's 10%, on others, it's 3%, and on some forms of deposits, reserve requirements are 0. The result is that the expansion of the currency supply by the banks is far greater than even this example would lead you to believe. So once again, when currency is deposited in the banks get to lend it out, and then it gets redeposited and relent, redeposited and relent, redeposited and relent over and over again, creating bank credit all the way. This is where the vast majority of our currency supply comes from. In fact, 92 to 96% of all currency in existence is created not by the government, but here in the banking system. Now, massive amounts of currency spewing into society may at first sound like a fun idea. That is, until you remember one of the most important hidden secrets of money from episode 1, that the prices of everyday goods and services act as a sponge on an expanding currency supply. The more currency we have, the more prices rise. This is where inflation comes from. The true definition of inflation is an expansion of the currency supply. Rising prices are merely the symptom. So our entire currency supply is nothing but a couple of bucks whipped up in this hocus-pocus scam where the Treasury and the Federal Reserve swap glorified IOUs, and a bunch of numbers that the banks just type into their computers. That's it. That's our entire currency supply. It's nothing but a supply of numbers. Some of them printed, most of them typed. And there is nothing else. But if you thought that was crazy, get ready to enter the twilight zone of modern economics. We work for some of that currency supply. True wealth is your time. But we trade away moments of our lives, hour by hour, day by day, and year by year, for numbers that somebody printed on pieces of paper or just typed into a computer. Now those numbers represent our blood, sweat, tears, labor, ideas, and talent. We are what gives the currency its value. But here comes the really cruel joke. We work hard so that we can save some of that currency, so that we can pay the tax collector in the United States, it's known as the IRS, They then turn it over to the Treasury so that the Treasury can pay the principal plus interest on that bond that the Federal Reserve bought with a check drawn on an account that has nothing in it. Now let's do a recap on this section because this is where the system begins to rob you and I on a massive scale. Much of our taxes are not used for schools, roads, and public services, but to pay interest on bonds that the Federal Reserve bought with a check drawn on an account that has nothing in it. The Federal Reserve is committing fraud. But here's one of the biggest secrets of them all. Before the establishment of the Federal Reserve, there was no need for personal income tax. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913, and that very same year, the Constitution was amended to allow income tax. Do you really think this was just a coincidence? Ask yourself how much income tax you've paid over your lifetime. Much of it has been silently siphoned away into the hands of those who own the system. Yes, this system has owners. Who they are is an even bigger secret that we'll get to shortly. But first, we need to understand the mumbo-jumbo of the so-called debt ceiling. It's all based on a huge paradox. There was interest due on that bond, and there was interest due on every one of those loans that the banks made. That means that there is interest due on every dollar in existence. Let me ask you something. If you borrow the very first dollar into existence, and that's the only dollar that exists on the planet, but you promise to pay it back plus another dollar's worth of interest, where do you get the second dollar to pay the interest? The answer is that you have to borrow that one into existence and promise to pay it back with interest as well. So now there are $2 in existence, but you owe $4, and so on and so on. The result is there's never enough currency to pay the debt. There is always more debt in the system than there is currency in existence to pay the debt. Therefore, the whole system is impossible. It is finite. It will come to an end one day. What would happen if the government stopped borrowing to do deficit spending? Are the payments on those treasury bonds going to stop? What would happen if the public stopped borrowing and going deeper into debt? Are your house and car payments going to stop? No. There is a payment due every month on the principal plus the interest on every dollar in existence, and those payments do not stop. If we stop borrowing, then no new currency is created to replace the currency that we used to make those payments. Whether you're making a payment on a loan or paying tax to make a payment on a bond, the portion of the payment that goes to pay off the principal extinguishes that portion of the debt. But the debt also extinguishes the currency. Currency and debt are like matter and antimatter. When they meet, they annihilate each other. If we just pay off the principal only on all the loans and bonds that exist, the entire currency supply just vanishes. So if we don't go deeper into debt every year, look what happens. The whole thing goes into a deflationary collapse under the weight of those payments. Politicians and pundits alike talk about balancing the budget, paying down the debt, and living within our means. They don't understand that that is deflationary. It is impossible to do under our current monetary system without collapsing the whole economy. This is why any talk of a debt ceiling is not only ridiculous, it's delusional. The system is designed to require ever-increasing levels of debt just to continue. And that's why politicians will always kick the can down the road and raise this so-called debt ceiling over and over again until the whole system finally collapses under its own weight. In other words, they don't want it to collapse on their watch. The founding fathers of the United States knew the dangers of central banking and fought to free themselves from this very thing. The Revolutionary War started out as a tax revolt, but now we must pay tax just to have a monetary system. Having just suffered through the hyperinflation of the continental dollar, which was printed into oblivion to finance the Revolutionary War, they understood the dangers of fiat currency and debt-based monetary systems. So to protect future generations from institutional theft and out-of-control government, they wrote into the Constitution that only gold and silver can be money, for the simple fact that you can't print them. Our current system is not only unconstitutional, but it robs us of the liberty and prosperity our forefathers fought and died for. We are all feeling the effects of ignoring the Constitution right now. By forcing more currency into circulation, our purchasing power is diluted. Inflation is a slow and insidious stealth tax that is simply the result of this debt-based monetary system. This system empowers and benefits those who create the currency and receive it first, as they get to spend it into circulation before it has an effect on the economy. They're stealing purchasing power from you and transferring it to the banks and the government every hour of every day because of this false monetary system. And it's not like the people at the top don't know this. To quote the Federal Reserve, the decrease in purchasing power incurred by the holders of money due to inflation imparts gains to the issuers of money. This is a fraud. It is a pyramid scheme, it is a Ponzi scheme, it's a scam, and it's a lie. Our entire monetary system is nothing but a form of legalized theft. But here's the biggest con job of them all. The Federal Reserve is not federal, it has stockholders. There is no federal agency that has stockholders. What's a stockholder? Stock represents a percentage of ownership in a corporation. So the stockholders are the owners of that corporation. Therefore, the Federal Reserve is a private corporation with owners. And you can see it for yourself if you go to the Federal Reserve's website, and it will say, the stockholders receive an annual dividend of 6%. Now we know that the stock in the Federal Reserve was originally issued to the largest banks in the United States. But because of mergers and acquisitions through the years, you can't actually trace who owns the stock in the Federal Reserve. That's a very closely guarded secret. My guess would be that the owners are those primary dealers, the banks that get to make a profit by selling part of our national debt, those bonds, to the Federal Reserve, who buys them with a check from nothing. Then we pay tax to pay the principal and the interest on those bonds so that the Federal Reserve can pay the banks a 6% dividend. Don't be alarmed if you don't quite comprehend the deception of this system at first glance. Very few people do. It is purposely complex. The economist John Maynard Keynes once wrote, "By this means, government may secretly and unobserved confiscate the wealth of the people, and not one man in a million will detect the theft." I believe that presented correctly, anyone can understand this system, regardless of how complex it is. So let's do a recap and break it down even more. The way the system works is that, step 1, the government creates glorified IOUs. These bonds increase our national debt and put the public on the hook to pay it back. Step 2, IOUs are swapped to create currency. The Treasury sells the bonds to the banks. The banks then turn around and sell our national debt at a profit to the Federal Reserve, which they probably own. The Federal Reserve then opens its checkbook that doesn't have a penny in it and buys those IOUs with IOUs that it writes, checks, on a checking account that has a zero balance. Then they give those checks to the banks and currency just springs into existence, and then the whole process repeats. This results in a buildup of bonds at the Federal Reserve and currency at the Treasury, which is really just a supply of numbers. The Treasury then deposits the numbers in the various branches of the government, and we get to step 3. The government spends the numbers on promises, public works, social programs, and war. Then government employees, contractors, and soldiers deposit their pay into the banks. And we get to step 4, where the banks multiply the numbers by magically inventing more IOUs through fractional reserve lending, where they steal a portion of everyone's deposit and lend it out. That currency gets redeposited, and then a portion is stolen again. And the process repeats over and over, magnifying the currency supply exponentially. Then we work for some of those numbers, which brings us to step 5, where our numbers are taxed. We pay tax to the IRS, who then turns our numbers over to the Treasury, so the Treasury can pay the principal plus the interest on bonds that were purchased by the Federal Reserve with a check from nothing. Then we get to step 6, the debt ceiling delusion. The system is designed to require ever-increasing levels of debt and will eventually collapse under its own weight because politicians always kick the can down the road. They don't want it to collapse on their watch. And finally, step 7, the secret owners take their cut. The world's largest banks own the Federal Reserve. Those banks make a profit selling our national debt to the Fed. They make a profit when the Fed pays them interest on the reserves held at the Fed, and the Fed pays them a 6% dividend on their ownership of the Fed. This system is fundamentally evil. It funnels wealth from the working population to the government and the banking sector. It is the cause of the artificial booms and busts of modern economies, and it causes great disparity of wealth between the rich and the working class. And it is only possible because we no longer use real money, we use currency. But worst of all, it is a form of enslavement. Bond is the root word of bondage. Whenever a government issues a bond, it is a promise to make us pay tax in the future. Nobody asked you if you wanted to pay tax today for the prosperity we all enjoyed in the last century. Nobody is asking our children if they want to work hard in the future to pay for the prosperity we're enjoying now. George Washington once wrote to James Madison, "No generation has the right to contract debts greater than can be paid off during the course of its own existence." By stealing prosperity from tomorrow so we can spend it today, we enslave ourselves and future generations. Now, this all sounds pretty bad, but there is great hope, for you are the greatest threat to this false monetary system. This system relies on the public being ignorant of its workings. Please share this knowledge with everyone you know, because an informed public that fully understands the system can build a better future for generations to come. And now I leave you with this quote, widely attributed to a former director of the Bank of England. "The modern banking system manufactures money out of nothing. The process is perhaps the most astounding piece of sleight of hand that was ever invented. Banking was conceived in inequity and born in sin. Bankers own the earth. Take it away from them, but leave them the power to create money and control credit, and with the flick of a pen, they will create enough money to buy it back again. But if you want to continue as the slaves of bankers and pay the cost of your own slavery, let them continue to create money and to control credit." This is the Federal Reserve in Washington, D.C. It's located on Constitution Street, and that is just as much of a joke as the New York Fed being located on Liberty Street. Both of them are unconstitutional, both of them limit our liberty, and they transfer wealth away from us every second of every day to the Federal Reserve, to the government, and to the banking sector. You are now among the 1 in a million who can detect the theft of your prosperity. So the big question is, what can you do about it?
Okay, now this was a complex video. For some of us, we might not understand everything at first. So as was suggested, we may need to watch again to really understand how the system works. But I echo the thoughts of the gentleman there. What can we do? We need to share this information so that people understand that the bank them thief and the government thief. No, USA as the Federal Reserve, we have the Bank of Jamaica, which, for your information, is also owned by private owners who benefit of this thieving system. So while we are suffering with inflation, they are cashing in on it. And the so-called Bank of Jamaica is really a bank, a cash money, a cash cow for these private owners of the system. Now, we have here a description of the system in the United States of America, but it's similar here. Now, you see the danger of having a central bank that is responsible for our currency. Now, I started out calling it money, but then you would see during the presentation it's not money. I know that we are educated and schooled. We're talking about currency because money has real value, such as gold and so forth. The dollars that we use is just based on something that somebody type in a computer and so on. So it has no real value. Now, we have this information now, and what should we do with it? We need to educate others, and we need to let people know the dangers of this central banking system that is controlled by the oligarchs, as we describe them, the private sector organization of Jamaica and the government. And neither of these institutions is working on behalf of the Jamaican people. No, we see why it is so important to implement a free banking system, a free market banking system that the UIC will bring into being so that we, the people, are the ones who have the power over the banking system and not a banking system run by legal cartels, legalized cartels who seek to rob us. All right, so there you have it. The biggest scam against people all over the world, not only in Jamaica. And the government and the banks are in on it. Just like the government is in on the security officers who are actually employees, they know from long time that they were employees, but they allowed the security companies to be taking advantage of these workers and calling them contractors. But we know that the government does not mean to defend our rights or to make life sustainable or easy for us. So we, the people, now have to feed into our own movement to empower our own movement that will in turn empower us. And this is why the UIC does not depend on backing from any private investors and big money people. The UIC is our movement that we must fund 250 Jamaican dollars a week or $1,000 a month. This will go a long way into ensuring that we create the economic system, the social system of which we, the people, benefit and are not controlled and limited. No, Jamaica will be a trendsetter in protecting the economic rights of citizens. And how will Jamaica be a trendsetter? Through the work of this platform, UIC. No, I don't want people to think of UIC as just a political party. We have had to register as a political party because the system makes it such that you cannot run for government office unless you register as a party. But more than being a political party, the UIC is a platform, a vehicle in which we as Jamaicans can become involved for our own prosperity and that of our generations. So through the UIC, we will make Jamaica a trendsetter. We will make Jamaica a first class country. We will ensure a free market, not controlled by the government or monopolized by corporations. We will implement alternative.
It looks like Chase, we've lost Chase. Um, Let me see if I can pick up where he left off. Give me a second, guys. All right, so what's the solution? Oh, it looks like he's coming back. Let's see.
Hello.
Hi, Chase.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Oh, I went out for a while.
Yes, you got cut off.
Oh, I had no idea I was cut off. I was here delivering.
We're talking away.
All right. So we will implement alternative energy systems and create the organic food capital of Jamaica to buffer our country against global inflation. Also, we will guard against false inflation by the by the government by enshrining it in the constitution that the government cannot engage in deficit spending. We cannot spend more than we can produce. That will be in the constitution, so no other law or policy can come in place afterwards and do that. All right, so the government shall not spend nor borrow more than the country's ability to produce. Now, if it is that the government sees it fit to borrow more than the country can produce, then the people must vote for it in a referendum. And this can only be done if the generation that voted for this is able to pay it off within their lifetime. It shall not roll over to the next generation. And this will be enshrined in the new constitution of Jamaica. So that this way we will not let our generation suffer, and we will take the power of the government to borrow beyond our means and put us in debt. Now, in addition, every Jamaican will be offered a job from as soon as they graduate high school. We call that our YES, our Youth Employment Solution. So long as youth are not already in a job or furthering their education, whether in a trade school or college or university, they will be offered a job with different fields. So nobody will be idle. And through, are you hearing me, Douglas?
Yes,
All
I'm
right.
hearing you.
And when they're working now, this caused the economy to be boosted, to get stronger. Now, people will also take home more of their pay, since it will be enshrined in the constitution also that government shall not tax the people more than a 10% income tax and a 10% GCT or sales tax. That will be in the constitution itself. So we take home more pay, more economic power for the people. Now, for those who can't work because they are maybe disabled or infirm, and for those who are among the poor that they're underemployed, we will fix the system bit by bit. The government will freely provide for these people nutritious, quality filling food, not no old cast off food, proper education, proper health care, and proper housing. Not the little flimsy food for the poor houses. No, and all of this will be provided by the 10% GCT, which will be dedicated solely for this purpose. Now, you see through the UIC how we will create more economic security for our people. Now, we will also ensure the stability of every Jamaican home by ensuring that each family has property as land to pass on to their heirs and generations. Right now, no more squatter, no there. And this is the slogan that we want all Jamaicans to know. Under the UIC, no more squatter, no there. The land belongs to the people, and the government must ensure, but the UIC government will ensure that this land is divested for the people for residential use and for organic farming. So no more bulldozing of citizens and calling them squatters. Our people must own land and property to pass on to their children. No more squatter. Now, can you envision such a Jamaica? Can you feel it? Do you want it? And if you want it, how badly do you want it? Do you want it enough that you will donate $250 a week? Do you want it so much that you will spread the word to those who don't know about it? Do you want it so much that you will volunteer and support the UIC to help us work together to build the country that we are proud of, that we can live in without having to relocate to another country where our heart isn't? No, until we, the people, donate, until we volunteer, until we spread the word and support so that the UIC can be in the position to make it to the polls in every constituency, so that everyone will have an option to vote UIC, then the change will not happen. Do we want real economic security for us, for all Jamaicans, for our generations to come? Do we want to ensure, say, them thieving people at the top can't inflate the currency like this again? Because we, the people, are involved in the economy. It is the law of demand and supply. It is productivity that runs the market. because now children leave school understanding trade, understanding technology. They're empowered to build jobs if they cannot find a job. Do we want this for Jamaica? Then the change must come only through us. No, as I said before, the UIC is not just a political party. And bear in mind, it is a party because it has to be based on the current system to go into hello, am I still here? Hello? All right, I was cut off for a while. We have had to register as a party in order to run for elections, but we are a platform. So we want all Jamaicans to understand that the way is here for our prosperity. No, this is what the UIC will do through us all working together. But until the change comes, what can be done to help the people of Jamaica? We must lobby now for government, for the prime minister, because the prime minister will not bring about the change that the UIC needs. But what can he do? Since the government is robbing the people, the government must make it right. Peg salaries to inflation now. And this is our cry. I ask that everyone on this call who wants to see this Jamaica into being, share this with everyone and help the UIC lobby for this on behalf of every Jamaican people. Peg the people's salary to inflation. And as Mr. Patterson said, peg it now. All right. Let us look at before we close off. Let us check the comments. All right, Red Noble is saying we want to be the #1 Caribbean country again. Where do you say when we finish, we're going to be the #1 country in the world? All right, we need USA base to get into some big secure funds. Well, we have the diaspora members in the United States and other countries. If you have friends and family in the US and in other countries, share the live, share the news, so we will get the work done. All right, our 10-point plan is shared in the chat. I agree with the peg, but where is the extra finance coming from to support such an increase? This is from John Shakes. No, I'm not sure what you mean by such an increase, John. But let me answer the question of where the extra finance is coming from. No, with everyone working, because what we see now, when the youth leave school, they will filter into a job, right? So we now have increased income through that 10% tax. When you have the majority of the citizens now contributing that 10%, you would be surprised to see how all of that adds up. Also, we will be boosting the manufacturing sector with school being not just teaching students what to think, but teaching them how to think, how to be creative, how for each person to be a business creator if they so choose, to boost our students' minds so that they enter into the world with the mindset to solve problems. We will find that the industry is boosted. And then when we cut off duties and stamps from importation, we empower now the factories and so forth to get raw materials to build so that Jamaica can be more of an import country. And also we are looking at making Jamaica the organic food capital of the world that will make us in demand. So we see now capital will be flowing in. Also, when we make the entire Jamaica like a tourist resort, that is where we're aiming at, so that everywhere in Jamaica is safe, clean, beautiful. not for the people that to come overseas from overseas and enjoy it, but for our own enjoyment and dignity. But what will automatically happen now is that people from all over will want the Jamaican experience. That is money rolling into Jamaica. With the change of the governance structure, where there is no no window or opportunity for the government scamming that going on now. No minister can directly touch the money like that. We also cut down on the corruption so that the people will now be able to see the results of the spending coming in from tourism and other industries in the country. I hope that would have answered your question sufficiently. Or the money we pay fighting crime will be better served employing our young people. That is true, Mr. Patterson. On other lives, we would have mentioned that crime is really a social problem. And when we fix the social issues, not by the big stick approach, by going in and beating up people or locking them up, well, if somebody commits a crime, they must be locked up. But this big stick approach, where you want to beat people and force them into submission, it doesn't work. We need to get into the mind of these persons. Often, when a man creates a crime, and I just say man generally, but when a person does these acts of violence, it's coming from some stimulation. What is needed? What is lacking? Right? For example, men need respect. If a person cannot achieve respect through the proper channels or the approved channels, then for him to feel good about himself, he will use those less approved channels to feel more like a man. For example, uh, 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 well, Mr. Patterson just said it. A youth with a job is a youth saved from the gangs. No, if a man can feel respect with being a academic youth or being a sports star or so, him get that boost from being a bad man because girl they love him and the man them rate him and they feel purposeful. So we need to look at these social issues and others because this is a basic breakdown. Now, a bad education system means more cost to deal with crime and other social ills, which also drives up inflation. All right. So this is why it is extremely important now that the Afrocentric curriculum, which teaches us the true history of Africa and world history, also looks at three main domains or ways of understanding. Understanding yourself. So when we understand self, understand how our body works, our mind work, why our emotions act up in certain areas, and how we are better able to manage ourselves and respond to situation. When we understand how people relate, understanding human behavior, which is the second domain, we are better able to negotiate social relationships and interactions. And it doesn't call for violence or fraud because we know, understand what makes people tick and we understand ourselves. And we don't understand. We just seem to we just seek to force our perception on others. But when we're able to understand others, it really helps out the social ills. The third domain is understanding money. Now, if you understand how to make money, then money can turn you in a fool. If you understand really how money works, then there's less chance of you know going into scamming, for example, because you are able to turn money without robbing others. So, with an education system that caters to these three domains, understanding self, human behavior, understanding money, plus a complete understanding of the basics, communication, sciences, civics, and so forth, we create a better society that we spend less money for law enforcement because crime becomes less attractive. All right, with all we're saying, people, none of this is possible without the UIC being in every constituency for election. And the only way that the UIC can be in every constituency is if we, the Jamaican people, take the take the opportunity now to build this platform. That's what I want us to look at it as it is a platform and opportunity that we need now to invest in. And when we say invest, we're not just talking about monetary donations, but we're talking about our time and effort for ourselves. Mr. Patterson just typed, we need 1,000 Jamaicans abroad to donate $25 US per month and 100,000 here at home, giving 250 Jamaican dollars per week. And this is how we ensure that all these niceties that you hear, because and let me not even denigrate it as niceties. All these plans, all these policies that we talk about day by day, week by week on UIC Liberty TV, they can only come into being if we, the people, decide that we have enough, that enough is enough, and the current system that seeks to rob us of our dignity, rob us of our money, rob us of our life needs to end, and we come together in a movement that that really propels us into success and recognizes our worth, recognizes our right to live a good quality life, our right to own ourselves and own our prosperity. Our 78 years of poverty will be eradicated. That is so right, Wayne Noble. If we ensure every child receives a proper nutrition, education, healthcare, and housing, this will lift our civility and productivity and prosperity. This is so true. I see Alan Scott saying, I can see clearly now, the nightmare will be gone. Yes, yes, Alan Scott. This is like the gospel, feel good. Salvation is here, but only if we take it. Under the UIC Jamaica, Jamaicans will have thousands and thousands of jobs for the first time at last. Praise God! And it's not the case where we like no, where we ask the government to create jobs and people need jobs, but we will be empowered to create jobs by our activity in the society. We are now empowered to make better of our country. Howard Foster, the Jamaican Tourism for All going to be a huge financial success to every citizen involved in the tourism sector. And I want to tell you, Howard, that all of us, by virtue of being citizens, will be involved in the tourism sector because everywhere in Jamaica now will be like a tourist resort. And for the tourists now to really enjoy the Jamaican experience, then come to your community, my community, Douglas community, right? And they're spending the money so that every Jamaican now benefiting from the tourism. So it's like everybody know by virtue of living in Jamaica and offering a Jamaican experience just by living becomes a part of the tourism sector. Uh, Mr. Patterson says our massive organic farms and community tourism across all 14 parishes will ensure everyone who wants a job can find one. Our work fair plan will see to this. No, Mr. Patterson used the word there, work fair. No, we not in the welfare, the handout thing, right? No, this handout thing. Well, as we said it, earlier in the live, the handing out free money and freezing quotations causes a glut in the system. And but what it also does, in addition to driving up inflation and making us poorer, is keep us dependent on those who are handing it out to us. Now we see a workfare system where the government takes care of you, but it is not a handout. You are working for it. So while you are working, you're paying your 10% income tax, you're paying your 10% GCT, which empowers the government to keep on providing these services that you need and that you may not have been able to afford out of your salary that's left and that you take home, but you're still paying for it with the taxes. So it's workfare, not welfare. There's no sit down at home and engage in society and expect to be given money. That's robbing the people. But we will ensure now that we, the people, are provided for. Wade Noble, I echo what you say. Fellow Jamaicans, please let us rise up from the 78 years of struggling, reversing and poverty. This is an opportunity. There are persons who try to tear it down. I don't understand how a Jamaican who is not rich like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Michael Leachin will want to tear down an opportunity. We allow the partisan system to blind us so that we are divided by political party. But UIC says one Jamaica. We we in fact, when the UIC is elected, because the getting into politics will not focus on whether you are part of a party, but on your individual merits. The party system will die out, and then there will be no more JLP versus PNP, Comrade versus Labour Right. We now become one people. There is no more haves versus have not. Everybody now can live a comfortable life, a life that is worthy of human dignity, so that we will become one Jamaica. No, Mr. Patterson says the JNP and PNP will copy UIC plans as much as they can. But if they couldn't do it on over nearly 80 years, you would be a fool to trust their promises now. The JNP and PNP will try to copy the plans, but we know that they will make a mock of it, because the UIC plans are to empower the people. The colonial system cannot empower the people or it will topple. It is not made to empower the people, it is made to make them overlords over the people. So even though the JLP and PNP may try to copy the UIC plans, they cannot do it as it needs to be done, or else they would be in trouble unless they become the UIC, in which way we win anyways. All right, people, we will close now in the interest of time. As Mr. Patterson makes an important point here, they will try to divide us within the UIC like they divided us nationally, but we must stick together as uniters. One Jamaica, we're stronger together. You see, there is a reason why Europeans were able to take Africans off the continent and ship them all over the globe. You know? Is that Africans divided themselves amongst tribes, and tribe only busy about for them own people and never busy about the others. So we know, and then within tribes now there are families who stick with to themselves. And this division of the black man, this division of the black race is our weakness. Now, we cannot be thinking as Jamaicans, the whole we are Jamaican, we cannot be thinking of us versus them, all of us in this. So we cannot allow even our own people to divide us as they divided our ancestors on the continent, and through dividing us, they were able to break us and enslave us for over 400 years. We cannot allow that to happen. No. The divided Marcus Garvey's followers, this divide and conquer game, it's all where we should be seeing it now. Unfortunately, even in the UIC, there were some who joined us and then sought within the ranks to divide us, but we are still here. We are still seeing one Jamaica, stronger together, and we know, ask all persons on this call to join us in this rally for one Jamaica, stronger together. Now, hear me now. You see, because I want one of you share this live, and people don't like things that are very, very, very long, because that our earlier segment where we looked at the banking system and the government collude now to rob us through inflation is a heavy thing, and we want this to be shared so people can really see it and see what's going on. But when people see something go too long now, they automatically don't want to watch it. So I be leaving you at this point, people. Have yourselves a wonderful night, and remember, as Lion likes to remind us, like, share, comment, subscribe, and for God's sake, people, do not ask what UIC can do for we. Look here now, man. UIC will do for we what we empower UIC if we do for we. So guess what? Get involved. Everybody, take care. Walk good. See you next time. One Jamaica.
One Jamaica, stronger together. Bless up, people.